Lovely, thank you so much. All right, good morning everyone. Thank you for attending. We do apologise, we've had a couple of technical issues. So just passing over to the CEO on the annual business plan and budget adoption. You're doing two things at once, so I appreciate it. Morning members, thank you for coming in early and making this occur. Obviously, we're at the pointy end of the stick, and now the statutory requirements are quite significant in regards to approving the documents that we have before us and for you to be setting your general rates. I do note that we've done considerable consultation around our annual business plans this year. In your last meeting, you talked at length around the submissions that have been received. And as a result, 2 business plans and 2 budgets have been prepared for you. Just to give you an understanding, each of those plans and the budgets took the officers around about a day each to prepare. So they are quite a complex document to change and to amend the model. Also remind you that you have approved your long-term financial plan, which I think is a fair and reasonable plan moving forward, especially given the fact that you've got a change in rate basis coming next year. And I think you should just be mindful of the fact that we have quite a significant amount of consultation and change for our rate payers moving forward as we go to a capital rating basis, which as we all understand, is a much fairer and more equitable rating basis than the site value that we currently work on. Before us today, we have a number of recommendations. We have had those checked by Halliday Jones lawyers. It is quite a necessary step to ensure that they're worded correctly. So I would err on the side of not changing them wherever possible. We'll step through each recommendation which is underlined, and we will be able to move and carry your motions as we move forward. I'll now hand over to my Deputy CEO and he can add any further information.
Good morning all. So basically it's been set up so the council can, as they move through the first recommendation, choose plan A or plan B, or depending on what the council wishes are. Both those plans, including them wording, the plan motion includes in their wording as amended, because the plans have been amended since I put out public consultation. So the changes made for those stipulated at council's last meeting. Obviously valuations changed as well, so some of the slight changes that came through between the consultation and when we did the prep for the final calculations. Should council adopt the motion now and then change things in the budget, I would look to go back and make those changes in the business plan, which has been adopted because it says as amended, so that can also apply to amendments the council made after they adopt it, because the new legislation now requires that you stipulate in the plan changes that were made after public consultation. The only other thing I will highlight is when we did public consultation plan, the cents in the dollar which were quoted in the statement of expected revenue, the decimal point was in the wrong place. So to give an understanding of how that works, the statement says cents in the dollar. So if you look at it from the perspective, if someone was paying 1 cent in the dollar on their rates, we multiply it by 0.01, not the 1. So basically, it says 1 cent in the dollar, the multiplication is by 0.01. They are now correct in the business plans that have been presented and are in uniformity with those information.
we've got quite a few recommendations in front of us. I think we are best off to get the ball rolling. The first recommendation is the adoption of the 2022-23 annual business plan, Appendix 1. Seeking some direction on that one.
I've got a question for you too. I circulated to all members and staff a copy of my assessment of the figures.
Yep.
Are there any corrections? Have I had a lady in respect to those figures?
I think company calculations are slightly out.
Slightly out, just dollars or nothing major?
Not significant, no. You did say in there that you wondered why the fixed charge was different. I think that's because your calculations are slightly out. And also the number for the valuation is in the first one. The 160 million.
Oh, yeah. I can see that. Yeah. Yeah. That's still 160 million.
That's correct.
Yep. Thank you.
I think the total is right. The calculation for the actual rate in the dollar value is slightly out from
Yeah, I just took the rate dollar and then multiplied it by the valuations to get a rate income.
Yeah.
And then the gross rates that we'd advertised, I deducted that figure from those to get the fixed charge rate.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And when I multiplied the numbers you had in bold, it didn't come to the numbers you had down the bottom, but it was only $50,000 out.
That is the basis of my discussion.
So like I said, we've got a recommendation in front of us. If there's no further questions, I'd like to see maybe some direction on that one.
I'm happy to move, so with the annual business plan B, that's the annual business draft plan B. Just going to do one by one, is that what?
Yeah. So each underlined heading will be moved separately. Did you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'm happy to do so. I've spoken on this topic previously, and the reasons I believe that we need a fair and equitable rating system which does not pit one category against the other. And this is what I believe is being coached by some councillors. I would question the motivation with Councillor Randall saying as to why he doesn't think he thinks the system's unfair in the information that he sent out. When based on the public meeting and the written submissions received, that we did not receive any overwhelming negative feedback from the residential sector. And I might add that we did spend quite some time discussing that, as the CEO has already said. We've presented many rate scenarios over the last 2 months, and indeed the last 2 weeks, and I again draw your attention to the Local Government Financial Management Regulation 2011 6.1.2022, 6, the Annual Business Plan 1F, issues of equity within the community and the impact of rates across the area. We took the Annual Business Plan to public consultation. The feedback received indicated that ratepayers were on board with what we were trying to do as councillors. We had 2 respondents, which were duly considered. I think that it would be negligent to change the figures after we've taken it to the public forum and got endorsement to that plan. There's a long-term business plan, and that is what we are working to. I'm happy to work with, as I said, Appendix B as we look to, as we took on the public consultation.
Councillor Elliott, and for a second.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would like to second it. And I think it's worth acknowledging the debate that we've had so far, and the points made have been valid. And a lot of this modelling, and I really appreciate what's been attempted with some of the modelling that we've seen. And an observation that I can draw from that, our rating of dollar for category 4 is lower than our neighbours, despite being on capital values over the fence. Category 4 rate is lower than our northern neighbour by 30-40%, despite also being on site value. Our category 1 rate is higher in both those instances. Our fixed charge, I should add, is the highest fixed charge of any of the councils on the lower residential. All these things together create imbalances, which I believe it needs to be reviewed from the ground up. Which we've failed to do for the last 3-4 years, including this year, but it really needs to happen. And I think that has to happen in the new year. But now, I think the best path forward is to stick with what we've consulted on. And I know the difference between the rates, between the two we have today are only minor, in the tens of thousands. So yeah, it might be good to adopt the plan for the consultant today. But yeah, I think the discussion moving forwards about our rating system needs to be robust, and we need to start from the ground up.
Yes, I do. First of all, I want to rebut the statement that I've been divisive in the community by raising these issues. I think it's a debate that we need to have. And secondly, differential rating will divide the community, and that's why I don't support it. And it's unfortunate that you have that impression, Councillor, but I just think it's important that we have a discussion in our community about the rates and discussion between other educators. There's lots of variations across the system. We are required to raise our rates from property valuations, and we're also required to consider the ability to pay those rates. Now, they are the two criteria that council should base its decisions on. So let me just say in category number 1, which is what we call the residential or the township properties, $160 million worth of property, or 12% of the total valuations. 12% of the total valuations. Yet they pay $841,000, or 28% of the total rates. Or in gross terms, 41% of the total rates. So these people who own 12% of the total valuations across the city, District Council of Colony Bay, pay 41% of the council's total gross rates. People in category 2, and I don't consider category 1 and category 2 because they are the prime incomes. These are the things I've said to you all, so you know where I'm coming from. They pay 1.138, sorry, the property valuations are based at $1.138 billion, or 87% of the council's total valuations. So people in the rural community hold, in this council, 87% of the property valuations. We earn from them over $2 million, or 68% of the total rates, in rate revenue and valuations. And then we add our fixed charge to it, and in gross terms, the rural rate payers pay them 54% of the total rates. They are paying 54% of the total rates, even though they own 87% of the valuations. And that's why I think it's unfair, quite clearly unfair. So this formula that we've used for the last 4 years has returned this outcome. Councillor Elliott, it's your first budget, I understand that. I understand your enthusiasm to support the ongoing recommended staff recommendation to us. I understand that because I was similar to you when I got first elected. I thought what I was getting was information from staff which was recommending what this council had always done, and I accepted that. But I kept hearing from Councillor Laurie, and unfortunately Councillor Laurie can't be with us today. That's very disappointing. So I wanted to thank him publicly because he raised continually through that period of time, the last term of council, He's concerned about the differential rating being unfair. And whilst I didn't support him in the early days, his concerns were strong enough for me to do my own research. And that's what drove me to the position I'm now in, believing we have an unfair system. So for the past 4 years, for example, the property valuations in our rural area have increased by 64%. Property valuations in the town, just 2%. Just 2%. Beg your pardon? So I did give you the figures because if you look at those over the period of time, take the beginning year of our first term council and you look at the valuations across that period of time, you'll see it's only been a 2% increase. The Liberal government, in its term of government, has implemented legislation which is going to make it mandatory in this council to move to the capital value system. And I'm looking forward to that discussion and that debate next year because it's important that the community understands where we go with our rating systems. I believe it'll be a fair system, and I certainly won't be supporting the differential rating system that we have. So the figures I sent to you clearly indicate where I've come from, and apart from a typo mistake, I accept that, they clearly lay out in a format of the sorts of figures that we're interested in. Now, we can't get, and I did ask for it, we can't get the number of actual ratepayers for paying rates, but we've got rateable properties. Because I'd heard some concern that some ratepayers were going to have an $8,000 rate increase if I passed 16%, if I was successful in getting a 16% rate increase in the rural area. Now, I don't know if that's factual or not, but that's what I've heard. So I tried to work out a rough estimate of the number of actual ratepayers. People actually pay for more than one property. And my logic was that those who are on fixed charges and who have fixed charge exemptions must be included as properties together. So based on that, I thought about 530 people in the rural community paying rates and 898 in the township area who paying the rate notices. But those figures are very fluid because the facts aren't available. But we will get the facts when we do our review and our new system next year. So the calculations are there for your order, Steve, and I do believe we have an unfair system, and I do believe that's an issue that needs to be debated continuously, and the upcoming local council elections later this year will be an ideal time for people to put on the table what they believe is necessary in this community, and I'm certainly one who doesn't support the differential rating system because of the divisions of this that causes in our community. So I won't be supporting the motion we have on this.
I'd just like to make a point of clarification in regards to the people council Randall. Any recommendations that staff put up have come from obviously direction of the elected members. It's not our position. It's not our position to what we feel is correct. We prepared what you've instructed us to do. So make that very clear that.
No, that was not meant to be criticism. It's just an observation of how our process works.
Yeah.
And the process works that we request information to be put out. It comes back to us as recommendations, and we either adopt the recommendation or we don't. And that's
Just as long as it's.
sorry.
We're not instructing you.
No. I have no concern whatsoever about that. My problem basically is sometimes council members don't read the agenda or do their research to have a debate. That's their issue, not the staff's issue.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Councillor Elliott, did you want to close today as the mayor of the motion? You're happy?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to call all those in favour. Carried. Those against, thank you.
Division.
All those in favour, please stand. Thank you, members. All right, moving on to Appendix 2, the 2022-2023 budget. So we've obviously got the budget A, budget B. Are there any questions for staff? No, wonderful. So there is a recommendation in front of us. Have I got any direction?
I would like to ask a question before we move to the budget. There are a couple of lines in the budget that I've got some concerns about. I would like to modify. I'm not looking to change the budget figures because I think that's unfair. And this is the staff have to go away and prepare another budget, so I'm not asking to do that. But what I'm suggesting is we raise the revenue and that we put it on a reserve account. And if we don't spend it then means we don't have to raise the amount of revenue next year. For example, plant replacements of $190,400 is 3 utilities or something else. I reckon I'm happy to support the budget on the basis we raise the money, but I would like to put it in the reserve so that we don't spend it, and that we spend it next year maybe, or it's $190,000. We don't have to raise it next year's budget. That's the logical. I just think it's a bit early to replace motor vehicles, but I understand council has a policy to do it and has put it up on that basis. So how do we handle that?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm not 100% sure on that one, but I do recall having a conversation with the chambers discussing the sale of vehicles and that this is the time to sell. And there was a recommendation from staff that this was an ideal time to get the best bang for our buck in a trading sort of situation. But I'm happy to be corrected by staff.
How old is the
The B,
that's 3 utilities?
yeah, the BB outdoor crew.
I would clarify that the replacements of vehicles that are in the budget are as per the infrastructure asset management plan, and as per the long-term financial plan. Outside work utilities are kept for 4 years, officers' vehicles are kept for 3 years or 100,000 kilometres. I believe the replacement of one officer vehicle, which will be nearing its 100,000 kilometres, and we'll see that probably in the next financial year. And it would be 4 years. I would stand corrected on that, but that's my understanding of it. And if you don't replace them this year and you put the money in reserve, it won't be money to use for something else next year. If you haven't replaced them this year, you're probably going to have to replace them the year after.
Yep, I understand.
So,
I'm just stalling the process for 12 months on the basis of savings and money for next year.
And I'd like to comment on that because I think Councillor Randall did, there were 4 items I think that you sent out and you referred to it as a saving on our budget. And I don't believe there would be any saving. It would be, these are in our long-term financial plan and it would be a deferral. And I would ask why we do that. Is it to make the bottom line look better? There would need to be a compelling argument to defer these items. You only put off what you could have done today. By deferring items, the cost will become an increasing impost on council. It might look better this year, but not in the long term. That's my thoughts.
So how can a $190,000 deferral cause increases next year?
You don't know next year whether you are going to have extra costs for those vehicles. They're older, they're going to have more kilometres on them. It's just a cost that's been. This is the optimum time to be selling. That's it,
In your opinion?
that's right. Just as you have yours, Councillor Randall.
Excellent. Thank you for the discussion there. Did you have a question?
I was was a comment on, if I could.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone else is
Yeah.
one, so.
Yeah, I understand the logic of moving it out by a year. But we're extra depreciation during that year for our budget, catches things obviously, and the trading value of the change over price may widen. So the budgetary benefit might not be as much as what we want to achieve. But now that we're at the point where we have modern vehicles, I've always been impressed with the asset management plan. At least in that regard, it's not giving sessions, I'd not believe it as it is.
Could I just ask, you as an accountant in your business, have replaced your policy the same as our company? Yes, that's 40 people, right? 20,000.
It's pretty standard. Often. Just so happens at the moment the trade value prices are up, so it's probably more beneficial now than it has been previously. But prices are going up too, so there might be a penalty for not doing it as well.
Council also has a favourable situation when we purchase the state government discount on the vehicles. So like on a Prado, for example, you get that an $8,000 discount on the public bank. You also don't pay GST on payable and claim it back. So the capital cost for us to buy the vehicle is a lot less than the average person in the average business. Business obviously get that tax concession.
Can I just say to Councillor earlier, I wasn't looking to change the bottom line. I was quite clearly looking to just defer it and then say next year's council budget bottom line.
All right, councillors, like I said before, we've got another motion in front of us, the adoption of the 2022-23 budget, appendix 2. There's been a little bit of discussion, but I don't think that there is enough appetite to do any alterations or anything went wrong. So there is a motion there.
I'm happy to move it.
Happy to move that.
So draft budget, sorry, Lee.
Speech to the motion.
Nothing really to add. Thank you everyone for their input so far to get to this point. Thank you for the discussion we've had. And yeah, it's not been an easy budget this year. We've probably had more discussion this year than any of the budgets that we've done so far. And I think it's quite an achievement to get to this point. Tell you the truth.
Thank you, Councillor Triffett. No, probably seconded. Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Did you want to speak to the motion? Councillor Abel,
I'm happy to support the budget because I don't want to stop it at this stage. We are already way behind in that sense. And so maybe it's a process that we need to review next year's our process of budgeting so that we have June 30th can announce that budget when first of August. But that's a process that needs to be reviewed. So I think the disappointing thing for me in reviewing our whole process is that we are running deficit budgets. And we have continued to run deficit budgets. And that's cost us our credit rating. Because it's my understanding there's no budget line this year for things like repairs to the seawall. You notice it's all barricaded up, so there's nothing in the budget this year for any of that expenditure. So we've got that barricade going up to stay for a bit longer. We are spending money on the jetty, but that's external money that we got last year as a grant. So as a council, we're not spending any ratepayers' money on the jetty. So that's again a crisis for us at some stage, a financial crisis for us at some stage. But our credit rating is so poor that we're not going to be able to get to borrow money to do the work. So we are in a different, and that's tied up to our long-term financial plan, the way we're planning our things over the years. It's all coming to a head. It's not there this year. We are hoping to balance the budget in 2026, but I fear for that as well. because the financial advice I'm getting as a financial advisor is that we're going to have a CPI by Christmas of 9%. And when you see what we've done as a council, for the next 4 years, we've added 4% on top of our CPI. So next year's council rates, we're looking at 13%. Now, we either go with that and try and balance our budget, or we are in a crisis situation of having to try and balance our budget. You know, we try and cut things out of the budget, but we can't because we're cutting services. And that's the big decision that we've got to make. We've got to be prepared to make some tough decisions and ask the tough questions. Now, Councillor Trevor is right. We've had a long discussion this year about our budget. That's been good, and we need to do it, but we need to involve our community. So I understand where we're coming from. But we are living beyond that. And if it wasn't for those forward payments that we got, we would have another deficit budget this year. But we've got some forward funding coming to us that balances the budget out of about 36,000 in surplus. So the thing that shocked me was that I worked as a council all the way through in 2020 with a budget on our annual business plan that we set for about 726,000. We set the business plan at that level. And when the books came in at the end of the year in 2020, our annual statement, there was a $1.5 million deficit. And that was a shock to me. And clearly indicates how things can get out of hand if we don't keep an eye on it. And as councillors, we have the responsibility. We are the ones that are accountable to the community. The staff can only do with what we get instructed to do. What made earlier by the CEO. We are the elected body that's got to put our hand up and say that in 2020 we had a $1.5 million deficit. Now, as these deficits grow, there's two things going to happen. Next year, the Grants Commission are going to be here to look at us, and they'll be asking questions about our rate of the dollar and our rural rating and all the rest of the stuff that they ask us. But if it becomes so significant in our community, somebody can express some strong concerns and hope the Minister of Local Government investigators to find out why we are running the deficit we are. We have to clearly demonstrate in the future that we can cope with the deficits, but you know, 4% on top of CPI next year is going to give us a crisis. And we're going to have to grapple with it again on how we're going to do it. So I just don't see the financial future of this council in a positive light. Given the demands of things like the jetty, the demands of the seawall, it needs repairing and replacing. There's some significant demands. And this year we spent $1 million sealing our roads and grading our roads, not sealing our roads, sorry, building the roads in the rural community. Now, I don't have a problem with that, but that's $1 million exercise that we need to go through. So they're the sort of financial pressures I just try and impress upon elected members, and I will, again, during an election campaign process, try and get people who understand the significance of the different we as a council, and who want to come in and do something about it, and who are prepared to support our community and keep their rates at a reasonable level, but also fix the council. Because the other option, of course, as we all know, is we start talking about amalgamation and broaden our rate base and get the benefits of doing that. And that's not another option that I have to consider at this stage. But it's budget debate, it's budget discussion. They're the concerns that I have. Happy to support the current situation because I don't want to stop it. But clearly want to indicate a concern about the deficit budget.
So everyone's looking to motion. Councillor Turner, did you want to close the debate?
I don't want that to be raised. Yeah, as a council, we've spoken a lot on this topic, and you know, and if I might just in reference to some of the council members' comments, is valid. I guess our credit rating isn't affected because, as a council, we made the decision as a group that we would pass on an additional a higher rate increase than previously, which wasn't an easy decision, but we made it as a group Because in our view, we couldn't find the future council to more than another term last year council, great increase, which we all knew would be in practice, because it hasn't happened in the past. But, you know, we are one of the early adopters who are passing on a higher rate in our area, and inflation will be higher for the next 12 months plus, and those that haven't done it this year will likely have to do it in next year, and that's simply the way it is. But, you know, I do feel we've made that stronger decision early on, and we're better for it. The distribution of rates will always be an item for discussion, and a fair one. We'll have a confusion. But yeah, I think that's probably all that's really relevant for me today.
Right, thank you, Councillor Tremor. All right, so all those in favour of the motion, the adoption of the 2022-23 budget, next to. Carried. Thank you so much. Right, moving on, adoption evaluation. Have I got any questions for staff about this one?
The valuation figures that were circulated, are they the valuations that were adopted today? They're in this.
We may get challenged. Some people may challenge that valuation, and if it's upheld by the value of debt, then we have to modify the rate.
Yeah, sure. I just want to know which figures were there.
That's the most recent figures.
Yep.
So are there any further questions? No. So I have a motion in front of us. Is there an appetite to move that way?
Are the valuations as presented by the valuer general to what, sorry, as the motions is?
Beautiful, thank you, Councillor Randall, seconder. Councillor Tremor, thank you. All those in favour? Carried. We're going to move on to the discussion on that. I apologise. Declaration of rates, and moving down to the general rate. Have I got any discussion or questions on that one?
Yeah, what page?
So just page 3 of your agenda.
Don't you have to adopt, or you can adopt?
Yeah.
From here?
Yeah, it is, but we have to adopt it separately.
Because what we're doing now is we've debated the business plan. Business plan that we accepted now. We're
We're
also
adopting the
adopting
concept of the business plan.
Yeah, it's all, somebody in an office decided that we had to adopt it all separately one
Well,
day,
I'm happy
and
to
that's
adopt
how it goes.
The
So,
recommendation as
thank
per-
you, Councillor Tremor. All right, and a seconder for that one. Thank you, Councillor Elliott.
We can need to clarify which one you included in that. General rate, basically,
whatever the concept of business plan control.
B.
B.
Do you want to do general rates, do actual general rate?
Sorry, we can declare it all in one.
you can adopt like the first motion, that's fine, but then you have to step through the differential rates up.
Well, that's what we've done previously.
Yeah, so you're just
So,
moving that first section.
Yep,
So
yep.
you can have two components.
Yeah, that's what we've done previously. That was what I was doing. So there doesn't need to be any adjustments or anything there. No, beautiful. So we've got a mover and a second. All those in favour?
Can I? Sorry, just ask on with adopting the other vendor's charge. Where are we saying this charge is $774?
On the next page, on page 4, there's a fixed charge heading. Alright,
So just, we're going to say this, the general rates now, just the fact that we're having a value, land value and a fixed sale. So
Yep, so just moving each section under the underlying heading.
Yep.
That's what we've done previously, so that was what I was looking for. So all those in favour of the general rate? Carried, thank you. So moving down to the differential general rate. Yeah, so, sure. So there's two sections there. The bottom section is consistent with Plan B, draft B that was adopted earlier in the budget, earlier in the meeting. So calling for a second, a mover on that one, sorry. Councillor Cameron, thank you. And the seconder, thank you, Councillor Elliott, all those in favour?
Not going to reiterate my debate,
Yep.
except for note. And that I've clearly indicated displeasure with
Yep.
figures.
Yep.
But given that council has supported those figures, I will support this on the basis of two things.
All those in favour? Carried, thank you. Then you're going to pay for the fixed charge. Are there any questions about this one? No, calling for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Speak to the motion.
Spoken to the budget and the business plan.
Excellent, thank you. Calling for a seconder. Councillor Elliott, thank you. Speak to the motion. Councillor Randall.
Stay on the fixed charge. When I did the figures on that, I'm a bit concerned again about the application of the fixed charge. I think we need to review our policy and who gets exemptions on our fixed charge. Because again, in the township, 68% of the people, 68% of the ratepayers who are located in the township pay the fixed charge. Whilst in the rural community, only 28% pay a fixed charge. So there's some disparity there, but most of it is because they are connecting their properties together to build an enterprise to farm on. I accept that. But all along in my own situation, I live in the rural community, and my council rates have been going down. I did ask council so as a rural ratepayer, my rates go down, and I'm concerned about it.
So I've got a motion and a seconder on that one. Councillors have the opportunity to speak, so those in favour? All those against? Carried. Moving down to maximum increase. Any questions on this one?
We're not sitting on that, sure.
Done with our discussion.
We don't remove it, sure.
They're like the CEO who spoke before, so we check that regularly during the session. All part and parcel of what we
Okay.
have to approve, so. The maximum increase motion, Michael Remover. Councillor Elliott, thank you. For a second there. Councillor Premier, thank you. Those in favour? Carried. All right, the separate rates, Port Mill War Memorial Hall. Are there any questions about this one?
How does that price get set?
So the rates in the dollar have been increased to achieve a 4.7% increase on what we received last year. So the rate of the dollar for township and sector, Dixon, basically, yeah, the general increase across the
It's not how it came up with the figure.
yeah, so I think it's gone from 7,300 to 7,100. That just paid directly to
Yes, yes.
All right, so are there any further questions on this one? No, calling for a mover. Thank you, councillor Trember, the seconder. Thank you, councillor Elliott, all those in favour? Carried, thank you. Moving on to the separate rate, regional landscape levy, just another one that we have to move. Sadly, but anyway, it is all part and parcel of the government. Any questions on this one? Councillor Trember, do you have a question?
This is levy. Is that a levy that the price of what
We provide an estimate of the number of assessments that for the next financial year to the board, and they set levies across the state for each of the categories. And basically, sometimes it might be slightly over, sometimes it might be slightly over, just because we get the estimates to when they give you the numbers back. And so it's a state number. It may have changed slightly. I think we've probably made them the extra this time.
Yep.
We've done a few assessments since
so it's reconciled, I guess.
basically you don't have to declare this rate if you don't want to. You're obliged to pay to the landscapes, the regional landscape board, a certain amount of money per assessments. We then have the option to choose to rate our properties based on the rates that we pay to recover that money. That's just rules. You don't set this rate, you still got to pay the landscape.
Any further questions? No, we've got a motion in front of us. Can I call for a mover? Thank you, councillor Trember, the seconder. Thank you, councillor Elliott. All those in favour? Carried. Right, moving down to the CWMS annual service charge. Oh, sorry, I missed the refuse collection. I know it's fairly important. Any questions about that one? Councillor Randall?
Earlier this year, on the 14th of July, I received a tax invoice for my rural bin charge. We haven't even set the rate yet. Why would they say that?
I don't have the answer, but I'm not sure. I didn't know that.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, it's illegal, I would have thought. I was surprised to receive it. I wasn't, I couldn't remember when it happened separate rate or not.
Follow that up.
Yeah, it's okay.
Basically, every database of people that put things up, they make charge for annually, but the notes should invoices should go out to those people pay and choose the same rate for those things as to the ones that in the rate inflation.
Yeah, I was just interested if we change the rate during our budget discussion.
All right, any further questions? No, the motion in front of us. Call for mover, please. Councillor Randall, thank you. Councillor Trember as the seconder, thank you. All those in favour? Carried. All right, on to the CWMS annual service charge. Any questions about this one? No. Wonderful. So can I call for mover? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Elliott, the seconder. Thank you, Councillor Trember. All those in favour? Carried. Moving on to page 5, discretionary rebate. Any questions on this one?
Have one. I think I got the answer to it, but I noticed that the golf club, Tommy Bay Golf Club, on there, and I wondered whether they own their own land or why.
They don't own their own land. Only the clubs that you own.
Oh, right. Okay.
Clubs that lease the land.
So they, yeah, I thought it had the reason why I didn't say that. I just wanted to understand.
Any further questions? Can I call for a mover on this one? Thank you, Councillor Trember, the seconder. Councillor Randall, thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Right, on to page 6, installment payment date. Any questions on this one? Councillor Randall?
I'll move it.
You have to move it, thank you. A seconder? Thank you, councillor members, all those in favour? Carried. Beautiful. Thank you very much, everyone. Managed to script for us to the meeting at 8:56. Ricky doesn't even have to like work. Oh, you don't know. Oh, no, you changed the hours. Thank you for your time, everybody. I really appreciate you coming in bright and early and being part of the council.
I think
We'll just-
that's-
Yeah, we'll just close the recording.
What is all the votes in raising the discussion start?
Yeah.
No, that's enough, and it's the whole process of.
Next.